Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Two major U.S. investors in e-commerce giant Coupang have notified the Korean government that they plan to file arbitration claims, accusing authorities of discriminatory actions against the firm. This follows a series of investigations into the U.S.-listed company after a massive customer data breach affected more than 33 million customer accounts. Top U.S. negotiators, including Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, have met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. This comes after U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had a meeting in Davos, which both leaders described as positive. Netflix animated film KPop Demon Hunters has earned 2 Oscar nominations, Best Animated Feature and Best Original Song for Golden. The film also won Best Animated Film and Best Song at the Golden Globes and the Critics' Choice Awards earlier this month. We begin this morning with U.S. investors in e-commerce giant Coupang moving toward international arbitration after accusing South Korea of discriminatory regulatory actions following a massive data breach investigation. The investors have also urged Washington to launch a trade probe, raising the dispute to a potential South Korea-U.S. trade issue. Our Lee Seung-jae starts us off.
Two major U.S. investors in e-commerce giant Coupang have formally notified the South Korean government of their intent to pursue international arbitration, accusing authorities of discriminatory treatment toward the U.S.-listed firm. Green Oaks Capital Partners and Altimeter Capital Management said Thursday they plan to file arbitration claims under the South Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement. The move follows a series of South Korean government investigations into Coupang after a massive customer data breach was revealed last November. In a notice sent to President Lee Jae-myung and the Justice Ministry, the investors said their combined equity stake in Coupang exceeds $1.5 billion. They argued that regulatory pressure intensified as Coupang gained market share from domestic Korean and Chinese competitors. In a separate filing to the Office of the United States Trade Representative, the investors also urged Washington to launch a probe under Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974 and consider trade remedies. They claimed that enforcement actions against Coupang far exceeded those faced by rival firms. The investors cited hundreds of audits, inspections, and penalties imposed by multiple South Korean agencies, including the Fair Trade Commission, tax authorities, labor regulators, and financial watchdogs. They described the data breach as limited and accused officials of exaggerating the incident to inflame public opinion and harm the company. They also said the regulatory campaign erased billions of dollars in market value, losses they say were borne by U.S. shareholders, including retirement funds. In response, the Blue House said the investigation should not be viewed as a trade dispute with the U.S., stressing that the probe reflects the unprecedented scale of the data leak and is being conducted in accordance with South Korean law. Coupang was founded by Korean-American entrepreneur Kim Bum-seok and generates about 90% of its revenue in South Korea. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in other news, amid geopolitical tensions, the price of gold continues to soar, and many analysts believe the surge is here to stay. Our correspondent Park Jun-an explains more.
The price of gold is skyrocketing day by day. And this is not just an upward trend that has been going on in the past few months. Even though the price of gold is rapidly rising, investors are actively buying it, an asset that does not decay, retains value, and is globally accepted.
My mother turned 60 this year, so I came to buy a gold bracelet as a commemorative gift. Gold prices have risen a lot recently, but I think they may continue to climb, so I felt it was better to buy it sooner rather than later.
The sharp rise in gold prices has been particularly evident over the last few years, and especially when U.S. President Donald Trump was inaugurated in January 2025. In the past 5 years, the price of gold has risen from around $1,852 per troy ounce to approximately $4,800. This is a 159.1% increase over that period. And when it comes to Korean won, the increase becomes far more pronounced. Over the same 5-year period, the purchase price of gold jumped from just 271,000 won per ton, or 3.75 grams, to 993,000 won. That marks a 266.4% increase. Although international gold prices have steeply risen, the hike is seen more prominently in Korea, with the dollar value against the Korean won appreciating by more than 33% in those 5 years. Alongside that, buying physical gold in Korea can add 15% to the price due to value-added tax and labor charges. Now, as you can see, this 1 kilogram gold bar I'm holding is worth more than 265 million Korean won, or roughly 180,000 US dollars. The managing director of the Korea Gold Exchange, whose company produces and sells billions of dollars worth of gold and silver annually in Korea, says global uncertainty has driven the steep price hikes.
Global economic instability, ongoing wars, and uncertainty surrounding the U.S. dollar's depreciation have all combined to push gold prices sharply higher, with new issues continuing to emerge, including the situation involving Greenland just yesterday. Uncertainty is intensifying, and that upward trend appears to be gaining further momentum.
Looking ahead, long-term gold prices will be shaped by a mix of inflationary trends, interest rates, and geopolitical risks. Alongside this, global economic uncertainty and monetary policy will also be key factors affecting prices. 박준환, Arirang News.
South Korea's benchmark stock index, the KOSPI, has finally surpassed the 5,000-point mark, a milestone that once seemed out of reach but arrived much sooner than many had expected. For more on this, we're joined today by Dr. Sung-soo Eric Kim, founder and CEO of DataCrunch Global and adjunct professor at Yonsei Graduate School of Business. Dr. Kim, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
So what do you think were the main drivers behind the Korean stock market rally?
So I think there's a couple of components that is driving the current rally. First, it's very monumental to see a 5,000 index in KOSPI, because that was one of the promises of President Lee during his election. And there's also a special committee on KOSPI 5,000. So I think it's very monumental that we have achieved the 5,000 index, which has been a dream for a long time. There are a couple of components. First, we are seeing a very, very strong tech sector. Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix is the center of the global semiconductor manufacturing. And we can imagine from the AI boom and also the robotics boom and data center booms that Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix is a very valuable investment. So they are leading the index to grow to 5,000. Other aspects is the high currency rates. Korean won greatly depreciated. So there's also a factor of inflated assets that we're observing. So there's two factors tangled together with each other, a real growth and also some kind of a inflation in the assets. The other factors is the movement of capital. A lot of money from the real estate has been moved to the stock market. So that's also an additional factor that is driving the 5,000 index.
Right, like you just mentioned, much of the market's rise has been led by the two largest companies by market cap, Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix. How long do you see the semiconductor boom lasting, and what's your outlook for the industry for the rest of the year?
So I've been commenting publicly when it comes to a question of whether there's an AI bubble. I'm saying that we have to decouple the AI discussion with the semiconductor discussion, because we are seeing duplicated investment in data centers. And through CES 2026, I think everyone understood that physical AI is right around the corner. That all requires semiconductors, which are manufactured in two places in the world, Korea and Taiwan. So we're seeing a strong growth in the semiconductor sector, regardless of whether AI is in a bubble or not. Of course, even if the large language models AI is in a bubble, we are seeing that the physical AI sector is growing. So I think that this cycle will be extended for at least some time. And that's the optimism that global investors are looking into Samsung Electronics and Hynix, SK Hynix, when it comes to investing for the future, outlooking that this technological trends will continue for some time in the future.
I see. And while the stock market continues to, set new record highs every day, the Korean won is nearing its weakest level in more than a decade. The Korean government has pointed to continued overseas investment by Korean retail investors as a major factor. What are your thoughts on this, and are there any other factors we should be paying attention to?
So I think one of the fundamental reasons why the Korean won is greatly depreciated is, of course, what you have mentioned, the capital outflow from Korea to foreign, investors. I mean, foreign locations, destinations for investment. So this is both the Korean companies investing in overseas and also foreign investors withdrawing from our capital markets. So these are two phenomena going simultaneously. So what we really have to work on is to make Korea a promising place to invest. We have to make our market more friendlier for foreign investments and also encourage Korean companies to invest in Korea so that we can manage the weak won situation. If you look at the trade numbers, we're having a record high surplus in trade. So in that sense, the Korean won should be stronger from the trade side, but it's the capital side that is outflowing from Korea. So we have to pay a keen attention on the capital management of Korea and making Korea a attractive investment market.
Right, and even the IMF has warned that South Korea's ratio of dollar-denominated assets is exposed to outsized currency risks. What steps should the government take to sort of manage these risks and support the Korean won?
So IMF is saying that our dollar-denominated assets overseas that are exposed to risk is 20 times our trading volume, foreign currency trading volume in Korea when it comes to US dollar to won. That's higher than Japan. Japan is lower than 20 times. The highest ratio is Taiwan, which is about 45 times. So the current government has to pay close attention on the global currency markets so that we don't have that risk exposed. I think it was a good strategy that the Korean Pension Service did a hedging with the Korean bank to manage this risk exposure from the overseas. But we have to also pay attention to the private assets that are being exposed to the currency risk. So I think it's a good time for the Bank of Korea to pay a good attention to these situations. Of course, the government and Bank of Korea is working together very, very tightly to manage the depreciated won situation. But I think that we need to show a more bold strategies, even thinking about considering what we should do with our monetary policy and our interest rates. But that's a very difficult discussion because we have a very high debt rate right now, which makes it hard for our governments to increase the interest rates. But a fiscal policy of having contraction of the fiscal policy might help managing the situation.
Right, I guess we'll have to see how that goes. All right, Dr. Kim, thank you so much for your time and insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff began talks in Moscow late on Thursday night. This high-stakes meeting comes hours after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and U.S. President Donald Trump met at Davos. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more. Top U.S. negotiators, including Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow late on Thursday. In a statement posted on Telegram, the Kremlin said that talks between Putin and Witkoff were underway. President Putin had previously indicated that he would discuss with Witkoff a plan to allocate $1 billion from Russia's frozen assets in the United States into the Board of Peace, a new international body proposed by Trump. Before that, U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had a meeting on Thursday in Davos, Switzerland, which both of them described positively. On the sidelines of the World Economic Forum, the two leaders had an hour-long session on post-war security guarantees for Ukraine and plans for economic reconstruction.
I had a very good meeting with President Zelensky. Everybody wants to have the war end.
Zelensky, too, gave a positive assessment of the talks and added that Ukrainian and Russian teams will have their first trilateral meeting with U.S. officials in the United Arab Emirates on Friday and Saturday.
And I think that it will be the first trilateral meeting in Emirates. It will be tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Yes, it will be 2 days meetings in Emirates.
Witkoff, who is visiting the Kremlin, also said earlier that he believed the two sides were down to one issue without elaborating. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News. Netflix hit animated film KPop Demon Hunters has earned 2 Oscar nominations. The nominees for the 98th Academy Awards were announced on Thursday, with the film recognized for Best Animated Feature and Best Original Song for Golden. Co-directed by Korean-Canadian filmmaker Maggie Kang and American director Chris Applehans, the movie was released last June and quickly became Netflix's most-watched film of all time. Earlier this month, the film also won Best Animated Film and Best Song at the Golden Globes and the Critics' Choice Awards. The Oscars will be held on March 15th. Meanwhile, the Seoul city government has conditionally approved a request by K-pop megastars BTS to hold a comeback show in Gwanghwamun Square in March. BTS agency HYBE asked for the BTS 2026 comeback show at Seoul to be held in the downtown square on March 21st. And in a meeting on Thursday, Seoul City granted conditional approval on safety conditions being met. The concert will mark BTS' return as a full group after 3 years and 9 months, and is expected to take place the day after the group released their 5th full-length album, Arirang. The Korean Olympic Committee announced Thursday that it has finalized its roster for this year's Olympic Winter Games in Milan, with a total of 71 athletes set to compete. The size of the Korean delegation marks a slight increase from the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics, where 65 athletes participated. 2,900 athletes from 90 national Olympic committees will compete for 116 gold medals in a total of 16 events in 8 sports for these Winter Olympics opening on February 7th. The South Korean athletes are set to depart for Italy on January 30th. South Korean baseball star and San Francisco Giants outfielder Jung-hoo was briefly detained by U.S. immigration authorities following his arrival in Los Angeles. Our Chung Il-im tells us more.
San Francisco Giants outfielder Jung-hoo was stopped by U.S. Customs and Border Protection when he arrived at Los Angeles International Airport on Wednesday local time, before being released about an hour later. He had flown in from South Korea ahead of scheduled team activities, including a fan event in California and preparations for spring training. However, a required entry document had been left behind in Korea, according to a statement by the Giants to The Athletic on the same day, triggering a temporary hold on Lee. The situation was resolved with assistance from the San Francisco Giants organization and federal authorities, according to the San Francisco Chronicle. The report stated that a spokesperson for Nancy Pelosi, the former Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives and whose district includes San Francisco, also intervened. E's agent Scott Boras cleared up possible speculation that the detention was related to the tightened immigration policies of the Trump administration. Boras told U.S. media that the incident was, quote, not political. The Giants echoed that assessment, saying the issue was quickly clarified and E was cleared to continue his travel. Now entering his third season with the team, E is expected to resume his off-season schedule without disruption. He is also set to represent South Korea at the World Baseball Classic in March. The team says no further issues are expected. 정혜림, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. President Donald Trump inaugurated his Board of Peace at the World Economic Forum on Thursday, pitching it as a global body to help maintain the Israel-Hamas ceasefire and guide Gaza's future. Trump claimed that 59 countries had signed on, but officials from only 19 countries joined at the signing ceremony in Davos. Those who rejected the invite includes several key U.S. allies, among them Britain and France, citing concerns over extending an invite to Russian President Vladimir Putin and fear that the board could undermine the United Nations. Trump said the board will stabilize Gaza and, following its success, spread to other things. He also said the Board of Peace would work in conjunction with the United Nations. President Trump on Thursday filed a $5 billion lawsuit against JPMorgan Chase and its CEO, Jamie Dimon. Trump alleges the bank abruptly closed multiple accounts in February 2021 with 60 days notice and no explanation after he left office in January 2021. The suit claims the closures disrupted his businesses, cut off access to millions of dollars, and forced urgent moves to other banks. It also alleges a reputational blacklist. JPMorgan denies all allegations and labeled the suit meritless, adding it closes accounts for legal or regulatory risk, not politics. Colombia on Thursday said it will suspend electricity sales to Ecuador and impose a 30% tariff on 20 Ecuadorian products, escalating a dispute over trade and anti-drug trafficking cooperation. The move followed Ecuador's President Daniel Noboa's announcement a day earlier of a 30% security charge on Colombian goods starting February 1st, citing a trade deficit and limited cooperation against trafficking. Colombia's energy ministry said it suspended electricity transactions as a preventive step to protect domestic supply amid climate variability and said it will reactivate exports when conditions allow. In Japan, Tokyo Electric Power Company shut down a reactor at the world's largest nuclear power plant just hours after its restart. TEPCO on Thursday suspended the restart of the number 6 reactor at the Kashiwazaki Kariwa nuclear plant in Niigata a day after workers began the restart process. It said a malfunction linked to control rods forced a halt, adding that the reactor is stable and that there had been no radioactive impact outside the plant. TEPCO said it is investigating malfunctioning electrical equipment and returned the unit to shutdown for a fuller examination. The plant had been closed since the 2011 Fukushima disaster.
The The week began with a deep freeze, and cold conditions are still holding firm across much of the country. Cold wave alerts remain in place for most regions, with many parts seeing temperatures dropping below -10 degrees Celsius again this morning. But afternoon temperatures will rise compared to yesterday. Then from late this afternoon, snow will begin along the west coast, and by tonight, snow could expand to more central areas. By early tomorrow, the west coast of Jeollado province could see up to 7 centimeters of snowfall. Gangwon-do might get 1 to 3 centimeters. Seoul and nearby areas might get around 1 centimeter. And this afternoon, Seoul will be getting up to -1 degree Celsius, Daegu topping out at 4 degrees. Now, meanwhile, dry weather alerts have been expanded and upgraded in eastern regions, raising fire concerns. The cold wave will persist through the weekend. While the worst of the cold has passed, temperatures will remain below normal. Stay warm in this freezing weather.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.